Good morning, all. This is Anushri from People Matters, and we are back with an exciting section of our webcast in partnership with Center for Creative Leadership on the topic Driving Digital Learning How to Strategize for Success. Digital learning is one of the most widely adopted modes of learning today. Unlike classroom, it is premised on self learning with an anytime, anywhere interface. One study showed that switching to digital learning saved companies, on an average, 50 to 70% of their training costs. It also saved 40 to 60% of an instructor's time. But the principal challenge is HR professional phase is driving adoption of digital learning. So, how can companies plan for success? Technology today is changing not only businesses and consumers, but also how organizations are organizing themselves and enhancing workforce productivity. This webinar will focus on how technology is changing the game in learning and development in organizations. So, here are the few discussion pointers that we will be covering during this webcast today, which also includes how can learning and development function, which has transformed over the last 2 to 3 years, what role has technology played in learning transformation, the 6 strategies for digital learning success, how can an organization apply all these 6 strategies for digital learning, what are some of the examples to learn from. And to take this webcast forward, I will take the pleasure to invite and introduce our speaker for today, Sameer Mehta, Blended Learning Leader, Center for Creative Leadership. Sameer joined CCL in 2013 and serves as a Digital Learning Products Manager at CCL. He works with various groups at CCL to ensure that digital learning products and blended learning solutions are designed and delivered seamlessly for CCL's clients. He enjoys designing learning journeys for sophisticated, discerning professionals that are truly immersive and blended. Sameer received his Bachelor of Engineering degree from the University of Pune in India. He has an MBA from Indian School of Business. He led the special interest group on mobile and e-learning for the ASTD Valley of Sun chapter in Phoenix. Sameer also serves as an adjunct faculty at NIT University in India. Our partner for today's webcast is Center for Creative Leadership. So, for our audience, we have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webcast. For those who are live, can simply submit post questions at any time during the session. We'll try to respond to as many questions as the time allows. So, we have an exciting topic to discuss in this webcast today. So, without any further delay, let me invite Sameer to take over. Over to you, Sameer.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anushri. Hi, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here today. My name is Sameer Mehta. I'm with the Center for Creative Leadership and really grateful to be able to share what we have learned, hopefully, learn a lot from all of you and have a lot of interactions. So, where I want to start actually is almost nothing to do with learning, but this is a tool that we're going to use throughout our session today. So I want to ask you the first question, which is if you will open your phone browsers, or you can do this on your desktop machine, go to pollev.com/lead poll. You can do this on your phone browser and respond to this first question that I have up here. Uh, what is your favorite European team? So again, on your phone browser, if you type pollev.com/lead poll, you should see this question. All right. Okay, we've got 100% support for Manchester United so far. Wonderful. I'll hold and see if there are any other supporters. Um, let's see. I'm going to give this a few seconds to see if anyone else comes up. Otherwise, we will declare a winner for this today. But this is a tool we're going to use throughout the session. So I'd really love to see you go here. So pollev.com/lead poll, and you should see a few options. And for those that don't like football, there is the option to say, I don't care about football. Okay, I'll assume that I have 100% Manchester United fans today, which is great. I don't know if you can see my sweatshirt, but I am a Manchester United fan. I've been one since. Okay, we got 50-50. Okay, you can't win all of them. uh, okay, this is expanding. Now people are getting into it. But I'll tell you my little story. I've been a fan of Manchester United since '97. In '98, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer won the league, sort of baby-faced assassin for those that remember that story. Um, and he's just a lifelong learner. He's come back to the club as the manager, and I think he's really inspiring his team as a leader, inspiring them to learn from each other and share. So, a huge fan of the club. Do you have that browser open where you responded to that question? Because I'm going to have more questions for you all through our session today. Okay, so we'll talk about 6 strategies for digital learning success. All of the things that Anushri shared, we will go through. It's going to be a bit of a fast session, but I know I have a very, very smart audience today, so I'm thrilled to be here. So, you know, when I think about what I do, I wonder, does digital learning, and within that, does digital learning for leadership development even matter anymore? We're talking about so much technology, robots, drones, phones, all of this stuff. But then when you look at what's going on in the world that is really led by technology, look at one example, Uber. A couple of years ago, one employee at Uber put out a blog post about her challenges with her manager and her HR leadership. And following that, really the dominoes toppled. The CEO was ousted, most of the management team was fired or investigated, and it was really a lack of leadership. That's what it came down to in so many ways. And so, a lack of leadership ended up costing Uber's investors. A drop in their valuation from August 2016 to January 2018, $14 billion, a huge drop, right? So a lack of leadership cost them real money. Uh, and therefore, we feel, as the Center for Creative Leadership, that we have some purpose in this world. Our mission is to create better leaders for a better world. That is the only thing we do. That is why we do what we do. And so we love doing this across the globe with all kinds of organizations, and we appreciate the trust that our clients put in us. But we do it because we want to create better leaders. And we know that the impact of leadership development is really critical. Through our research and research of others, it's important to attract and retain talent, drive strategy execution, and increase organizational agility and success in navigating change. And if you look at that last one, that is so relevant to the world that we live in today. Right? We're talking about the digital transformation that's hitting everybody, Industry 4.0, so many reasons that today being able to navigate change and increase organizational agility is so critical. And leadership development has now taken on sort of a digital avatar in so many ways. And I do a great deal of work with our clients as they think about digital learning for leadership development. And so, what I'm sharing through this session today is what we've learned through our research and through our work with clients. So, quick question again, going back to that poll. I want to ask the group, we'll stay here just maybe a minute at most, but what learning technology have you personally used recently? So, this is an open ended question. If you will respond, we'll just see where the group is in terms of responses. To hit refresh on your browser, um, and you'll see these questions come up. Okay, wonderful. Degreed. I'm assuming Manchester United was a typo. If it is a learning technology, that's fabulous. Yep, Degreed is a very interesting new player. Udemy, wonderful. Coursera, yep. I'm actually doing a course on Coursera right now. Intrepid, yep. Intrepid is wonderful. Google Primer, yeah. Google is putting out such great tools. They keep doing it. M learning. I'm interested to know more about that. Times come up again. Very interesting. Linda, absolutely. Linda, of course, the most famous acquisition in learning and development and digital learning. They got acquired by LinkedIn. LinkedIn got acquired by um, Microsoft. So really interesting how that space is playing out. Right, Udemy, Coursera really coming up strong. Okay, wonderful. And LinkedIn Learning officially. So let me do a really quick word cloud, or let me I'm gonna let this flow just for a little bit before I do a word cloud. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at my word cloud and see how that comes through. Okay, so Udemy is coming up really big. Degree, Coursera, Linda, and others. So great. We've got pretty broad set of learning technologies. Has really evolved massively in the last 30 years, going from CD based things and VHS tapes. But in the last 2 years, the options have right. I've been learning and technology for the last 12 years now, and really the last 2 years it has exploded. This is a visual that Josh Bersin put together, and I think it's a really good one to segment the market, the learning technology market, in one way. So you go from learning experience platforms, program experience platforms, micro learning, all the way through to learning record stores, LMS platforms, content libraries, assessment, development, delivery tools. But the choices are so overwhelming. And the ones that so many of you referenced are here, right? Coursera, Intrepid, Degreed, and so on. But the market is changing and even the categories are expanding. I think this is a bit. Then, the question becomes, how do we take advantage of this, right? You have so much choice, but how do you really make the best of it? So I want to ask a couple of questions really quickly for the group here. What is your preferred method of learning? As an individual, I'm still asking you as an individual, what is your preferred method of learning? Really just want to get a sense of where we are as a group. All right. Kind of at a 50-50. I'll give it another few seconds just to see how many responses we get. Okay, blended is kind of starting to dominate now. All right, some people saying classroom. This is good to see. I like the mix. I don't have a pick in this. Well, maybe I do. My title probably gave that away. Okay. Okay, so we have a dominance of 71% of us, 73% of us like to learn blended, 13% classroom, and 19% online. Okay. Okay, so that's a good mix. I now want to ask you a different question. Same three categories. Okay, I'm going to switch question now. But now the question I have is, what is the predominant method of training in your company? And if you answered, you can clear your response and answer again. What is the predominant method of training in your company today? All right. So a little bit of a different mix when we look at what is the predominant method of training in the company. Very interesting. Feels a little bit like a wrestling match. Come in. Say we're kind of at a stable number now. I'm going to assume this is a stable number, but isn't this interesting? So when we look at sort of predominant method of training in the company, you're at almost 40% classroom, only 16%, 15% pure online, and 45% blended. Uh, how you all responded is almost 72% blended is your preference. So there's a difference between, I think I've got sort of a more tech savvy audience here than the audience in the companies, which is great. You're my people. So what we see is digital transformation is happening, and I think our numbers kind of held out what some of these stats had before, which is from 2009 to 2016. Pure instructor led went down from 77% to 32%. And so there's been a pretty big disruption. We're really now looking at the transformation. Uh, and within that transformation, the learning management system is kind of the core of all of this. So I have a bit of a controversial question here, but I'm still going to put it up for you. I hate my LMS. Yes, no, my company does not have an LMS. So um, go ahead and answer that question, please. Um, and I know I could have put this as a graded set of questions, but I did want to force a choice. Okay, so this is not bad. About 56, 25. Okay, varying a little bit. I'll let it settle. Okay, about 30%. I'll call it at 30%. About 30% of this audience uh, hates their LMS. And what's interesting is a survey by the Brandon Hall Group uh, shows that uh, there are some massive barriers to satisfaction with technology: inability to integrate, poor user experience, all the way through to no or limited mobile capabilities, and poor reporting. And of all the technologies deployed, the LMS is deployed across about 74% of organizations. And I think our numbers held that out as well. But if you look at learning technology satisfaction, the LMS is most poorly rated. So, clearly there's a challenge. We have all this technology at our hands, but we're still not satisfied. We're struggling. We're frustrated in so many ways. And so, one thing I want to call out before I get into our 6 strategies and how to leverage uh, really what is now more being called behavioral nudging. What our presentation will not be about is buzzwords. So I will do my very best to avoid buzzwords such as blockchain, AI, and everything in between. Right. So that's my promise. If I don't catch that message, Reshma or Anushri will stop me and tell me I'm using too many buzzwords. Okay. Great. So, just quickly defining what is a digital learning initiative. Any learning initiative that leverages technology to reach people that are in different places at different times is a digital learning initiative. We think of device, consuming self-paced content, virtual instructor-led training, kind of sort of like this, probably with smaller groups, blended learning, so a combination of the classroom and sort of enabled learning, which is kind of using devices in the classroom actively. So digital learning kind of goes across the gamut. Typically, what we see in most organizations is e-learning is self-paced, and content is delivered through a learning management system. This is still the predominant method, even with the sort of the plethora of new options coming out. So what we saw again was so many of our clients have made so many investments in technology, and they didn't seem to be getting what they wanted out of that. And we really wanted to see how can we help folks who've already made investments with us or with others really get the most out of their digital learnings, content, technology capabilities. And so that's where these 6 strategies, the idea of less is more, right? Marie Kondo is now a big name, but the idea is serve the right amount of learning at the right time. What we see, I worked for a big box e-learning provider for a long time, and a typical e-learning story begins like this: we have over 10,000 titles, or we can scrape the entire internet for content for you, right? That's kind of the promise of degree right now, which is if it's a podcast, if it's an article, if it's a really anything that people can learn from, we can capture that learning in degree. And you have so much learning, and you have so many employees. And I'm not picking on degree alone. Okay, this is true for any of us. And a typical e-learning story ends like this: it's a big library, and there are very few people in there, and they barely took out some books and nothing much happened. And what we find is that choice, there's too much choice and it's overwhelming. And so our recommendation is really create learning experiences that work like a medicine, except no less. And I've got a case at the end of my 6 strategies where I'll kind of walk you through how we've seen this applied successfully. So I promise this will not be academic. I will actually talk you through one case, and then we might discuss other challenges that folks are having. The second strategy is this idea of support from the top. When we think of digital learning, a lot of people see technology as a silver bullet. It's not. It never has been, and it doesn't work. And we see this happen to clients all the time. Um, hey, we bought this technology, we rolled it out. How do you roll it out? Oh, email. And what's wrong with email, right? Email is the way we all communicate, but it's the worst way possible. In 2018, the average number of emails people sent and received was about 140. So, how are you going to get someone to pay attention to your communication? Uh, Standard rollouts often look like this. We've got some great content, or it even might come from an automated system. And if it comes from an automated system, you have the same level of success as the Prince of Nigeria, uh, right? The phishing scams. That's your likelihood of success. You really want to build better likelihood of success. Big way to do that is getting support from the top, leaders in your organization, preparing them, previewing the digital content that you're going to be giving out, and then recording a statement, whether it's a quote or a video or an audio clip, uh, with a senior leader is a great way to kind of launch a, a digital learning initiative. And we have so many ways using our technology to kind of keep that persistent. So, really think about that. How can we take a message from a senior leader and keep it persistent on whatever digital learning technology or program we're rolling out, right? And the second, leader support. So, support from the top, go all the way to the C suite, find the support of a leader, see if she can connect with you. But then, immediate support is so critical in learning. CCL has seen this through our research. Um, Boss support is a huge factor in the likelihood of success of a leader going through leader development. So, giving little nudges to the individual who's participating to engage with their leader, let them know what they're learning, work with them to see and make sure that what they're learning is relevant and is applied to the work that they do, makes all the difference in success in learning. So, support from the top, all the way at the top of the organization, and then the immediate top of your target audience. Um, the next one is this idea of learner centered design. So, we all talk about design thinking a whole lot. So, you really want to pick a platform and a cadence that is right for your learners, right? We hear this all the time, this idea of the overwhelmed learner. So, again, this was, I think, Josh Person who put out a typical learner only has 24 minutes per week to spare to learn new things. Um, 24 minutes a week is less than 3 minutes a day. Do we really have only 3 minutes a day to learn new things? What's interesting is the average Netflix consumer, because this is data they can capture, watches 2 hours of Netflix a day. So I believe the overwhelmed learner right? The distracted learner. And it is our job as learning and development professionals to pull our learner in, to hook them in. And we have a variety of ways to do that. Acknowledging their reality, the world that they work in. If you're dealing with a sales audience, they're on the road a lot. If you're dealing with a manufacturing audience, they may not have access to devices. If you're dealing with a very tech savvy audience, they expect a solution that addresses that. If you're dealing with a generational audience that does expect more contact, those are all platforms and cadences that we need to think about to ensure that whatever learning solution we design works for our learner, right? So the next thing I want to kind of call out is people don't learn by being taught, right? Death by PowerPoint is a non-stop thing. So if you really want to create behavior change, how do you do that? CCL did some seminal research a long time ago, and we've repeated this research multiple times. A lot of people don't know that the 70-20-10 principle was actually something that CCL discovered through its research on lessons of experience. So we asked a lot of leaders, how did you learn things, right? And what came from that research was we learned through challenging assignments, we learned through environment training. So, what does this have to do with digital learning, right? With digital learning, we really have the ability to span time. I think this is one of the most powerful things we have through digital learning is a classroom program uh, can only last for a finite period of time. A digital program has a much longer range. And so what we do is go find that buddy in the system, go find that developmental relationship, and relate that to coursework and training. So as a committed blended learning person, uh, every blended learning program that I design or I am part of facilitating at CCL, we think through 70-20-10. I won't go into this in great detail, but we see the 70-20-10 principle being applied almost everywhere consistently and not always accurately. One of the original researchers on 70-20-10 is one of my mentors at CCL. Her name is Cindy Macaulay. We to see how people apply this incorrectly. But digital learning gives us some great ways to leverage the 70-20-10 principle and really connect into the world of work. So there's a lot of talk of sort of learning in the flow of work. I think that is really this idea of 70-20-10 for today's day and age. So the next one is this idea of leaders as teachers. So reinforce concepts and scale up by having leaders teach. So before we go there, I have another pop question for you all. Let me see if I can start this again. I believe I have to activate. Okay. Question for you. If you go to your poll again, how much did the Uber stock drop from August 2016 to January 2018? All right. Some folks saying 16 billion. I'll give it another 15 seconds to see how many responses come in. Some folks saying 14. Some folks coming in at 12. Just a little bit more time. Okay. Got a good mix. Okay. All right. So, interestingly, the correct answer is 14 billion. 60% of you got that right. So, that's great. And this was something I gave you just about 20 minutes ago, right? Just about 20 minutes ago, I gave you the answer. It is 14 billion. People forget stuff. This is not your fault. It just happens. So, very interestingly, if we go back to this slide, about 60% of you retain this information, and we see a drop off of about 40%. So, we have once again proven the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. So, this is our success as a group today. But people forget stuff. There are many hooks into helping people remember, right? There are many. I'm not saying this is the only one, but a great way to help people learn something, retain something, is to make them teach. And again, digital learning, a lot of the tools that we have and how we think through our digital learning design, if we create opportunities for people to teach one, right? The medical profession has a statement. I really hope they work in a more detailed way. But see one, do one, teach one. uh, see one, do one, teach one, and they mean that about procedures. And so that's just the same idea. When we have to teach something, we really learn it, we absorb it. And so with digital learning, again, you can create those hooks for people to go out and teach what they learned online. Don't just keep it in the online realm, right? If all learning that we do online stays online, nothing's getting applied. So this continues to stay true. Learning partners. So I'm not going to put this out to poll, but if you made a fitness resolution on New Year's Eve and you said, I'm going to do 10,000 push-ups, your chances of success on average were unbelievably low. 82% of gym members go to the gym less than one time per week. 22% completely stop going 6 months in, and 31% say they would never have paid had they known. So when we talk about long-term behavior change that we're trying to make, it is really hard. It is unbelievably hard to make behavior change. Uh, One of the key ways that CCL research has proven um, how to make goals work. How do you reach individual goals? If you just set a goal, right, in your head, you say, I'm going to go work out. You have a 6 to 8% chance of success. If you set a goal and write it down, that goes up to almost 30%. If you set a goal, you write it down, and you verbally share it with others, write it down, verbally share it with others, and have an accountability partner, you're in the 85% range. Wouldn't we love that for all of our people at work? Again, if you're using the right digital technology, if you're creating the ability for social learning, for cohorts, for teams, for partners to hold each other accountable, you are creating the opportunity for people to reach their individual goals. And again, going back to 70-20-10, our purpose is not for them to learn something new. Our purpose is for them to apply that thing, right? So accountability partnerships really work. What we know is accountability partners are of two kinds. There are peers who learn together, they share experiences, they discuss challenges, and then there are learning partners who are other people in the organization, right? A boss, a mentor, a coach, a human resources business partner. Fear. Both of these, and you'll see the how in each of these, right? The how is different, but what tech do you need for this? Do you already have that technology? Or do you need to think about how you might leverage what you have to achieve these learning partnerships? So that's a question out there. Talk about measurement, and it's a ton of evaluation. Everything we do, we measure. And so with digital, one of the things we've seen is you can classroom learning to evaluating online learning. One of the biggest ahas that we've had in evaluating digital learning initiatives is matters. What kinds of digital learning experiences have they had? Have they had a digital learning experience? Uh, that determines their probability of success in online experience. Recycling questions from the face-to-face world is never a good idea. We have a ton of analytics that the virtual space gives us. We should collect those in addition to sort of smile sheets and things like that. We really have to think through timing and triggers in the online world, because how do you time and trigger a report for self-paced learning in an organization, right? That it's just something to think about. And most critically, whatever digital program you're doing, clear program objectives are far more crucial in the online world than they are in the face-to-face world. In the face-to-face world, you can get away with your learning not being very clear on. In the online world, that's all they're judging. So it's very critical to be very clear and remind them a few times, you came here to learn this. This is what we learned, right? So that's the 6 strategies. Less is more, support from the top, learner centered design, leaders as teachers, learning partners, and measure what matters. What I'm going to do now is show you a very quick example of how we put this into practice, and then we'll We'll talk about some ideas that you have. We'll talk about questions that are coming up. But I wanted to show you that this is not just theoretical, this can be done in practice. So, we have a program called Frontline Leader Impact. It is targeted for people who are leading others, who work for large organizations, who are geographically dispersed. So it's an entirely digital experience. It's set over 6 weeks, so it's set in real time. So remember that thing where I said learner centered design? We know that 6 weeks is a good time period. We know that about 3 hours a week is what they can give us. So we know that Netflix example, we have to tell them this is better than watching Netflix, right? So don't watch Mirzapur or don't watch the next yet. Give them time this week. But they can sustain that for about 6 weeks. So that's our learner centered design. Um, they learn together. So there is social learning sort of inherent in this because we know that accountability partnerships work. They learn with a moderator, with a guide by their side. So there is an external feedback because we know that people feel accountable to an expert as well as to peers. And so it's designed for that. The competencies that we develop obviously are picked from our research as competencies that are most critical for this leader level. And we actually have them pick a workplace challenge and work through that through the 6 weeks. So they're applying what they do to the work that they do. It is a very high touch experience, even though it's a high tech experience. The user interface was designed by IDEO, so we've taken care of sort of the UI issues, but the human issues are even more critical. So even though it's a 6 week course, we take 3 weeks at the minimum to set it up. We do client calls, we do manager calls, we do participant calls. So even though it's a completely online experience, we really let them know what's coming. We remind them multiple times. During the course, there are reports non-stop. There is sort of real-time reporting for sponsors of the course. There is real-time reporting for participants, and the moderator is talking to participants all the time. When the course closes, we give them 4 weeks more to complete the course. So we've thought about kind of that cadence, we've thought about support from the top. What we've also done with organizations that wanted to do it is shot a CEO video and embedded that into the course. And that's kind of the first thing the learner sees when they go through, because it's hard to get a senior leader on a live call again and again. But if you do it once, you record it and you have it show up multiple times, you're getting immense ROI from that one video. uh, and the post course, there's a final report, there's an impact assessment. We look at a lot of data. So from within the system, we're able to see, are they on track, have they completed, uh, what are their skill points. This is a gamification element that we use. What are their impact points? Have they completed all their lessons? Have they completed their key leadership challenge? Have they completed activities? So we can get very, very granular, and we do that in real time, and we do that at the end. We look at that data, and then in our evaluations, we ask learning outcome related questions. So when I said be very clear in your learning outcomes, communication, influence, learning agility, motivating others, political savvy, and self awareness, these are the 6 competencies that Frontline Leader Impact develops. And what we see is learners find that they have either already used that information that they learned, or they intend to use it very soon. So this is one of the signs that we see that, okay, the program's working. As a product manager, I look at this feedback non-stop to see how I can make my products better. We obviously look at end of program evals. We look at the subjective information in great detail. What are they better able to do? What could have been better? We look at that non-stop to improve. So digital learning gives you immense obviously. We love working on these things for our clients, and we really enjoy learning from each experience and making the next one better. So, those are the 6 strategies. I showed you the theory, I showed you some application. I know it was a very, very quick run through all of this. I want to ask you one question, and then we'll kind of, for you, right? What is one actionable takeaway from today's session? So I want you to sort of complete this sentence, if you will. one actionable takeaway from today's session for me was. And so, if you'll finish this sentence, and we'll give this a few minutes. And Anushri, if you want to look at if some questions have come in, I'm happy to start answering them now as responses come in.
Sure, sure. So we have a couple of questions from our viewers. Uh, the first question is about how do organizations measure the impact of digital learning on employees? So, how much the digital learning have helped him or her? Because in most of the cases, what they have seen is that they have to actually put a certain timelines to complete a particular course, which
Hmm.
really put them in a race to complete the course and not really learn something.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. So let me leave this poll for later. I'll come off. I'll come off slideshow mode and come back onto video, Anushri.
Sure.
Am I off screen share?
Uh,
Oh, I'm still screen sharing. I believe I should be back now. Am I back on video?
yes.
Okay, so great question. How do you measure the impact? And to ensure that people complete, we often put uh, a time barrier, which then has them kind of racing to complete
Right.
the sort of do compliance rather than actual learning. It's a balance. I think it's a fine balance. You know, we kind of talk about learner centered design. So what you want to do is design a program that has the right amount of pressure. So you actually, pressure is not a bad thing. Um, you want some amount of pressure, some amount of urgency. We use gamification as a way to sort of make that pressure fun. We'll actually give away physical prizes for digital programs.
Right.
So that kind of makes it fun, you know, gets people up there. In terms of measuring the impact, I think that's a really involved question. One thing I'll say about measuring impact is really take a long term view on the impact, especially leadership development. That's what we do, right? If you train a leader to be a better leader, you're not going to see impact in a month or even in a quarter.
Sure.
uh, you do have to look at that data, and that's why you want longitudinal data. So because when you send someone to a leadership program today, uh, it's very rare that you can promote them in a few weeks, right? What you're looking for is, can we retain the best employees? Are they able to attract more people? uh, do they get promoted? Do they deliver results for our organization? So the better integrated all of our technology gets, so when your learning records are integrated with your HRIS and are integrated with business impact data, then you can pull slices of that and look at the data analytics and say, okay, people who participated in this experience have been more successful or not than others. So some of the clients that we've worked with for over 10 years, long relationships, those leaders, you can measure the impact of that over time, and you see really really high impact. So I know that was a lot of things rolled into one answer, but hopefully that was useful.
Definitely. So there's one more question. So this gentleman is asking that the source of learning is okay, but how do we ensure the retention? The challenge we face is of retention of learning.
Hmm. Yep, I think it's a very real challenge. Um, One thing I'll say, I mean, uh, we've actually built a course out on Udemy. I have taken courses on Coursera. A few years ago, we had built a MOOC. So I've dabbled with a lot of these things, kind of setting the context. Um, People drop off, and I'm kind of answering that earlier question there as well. Most of the time, they leave the course in between because I think they're connected. Deepak's question and the question above are connected. So one, digital learning allows your learners to choose their path, right? So if you create a MOOC, if you create a big library and you say, I have a library, pick what you want, and then very few people come and pick what they want, and they very few people complete, what you're seeing is, once you take compliance learning out, you see very low completions. um, and that's because there are very few deeply self-motivated learners that are just going to go and complete for the sake of learning. You really have to make it real and make it count for them in the organization, right? If I see why this course is important, I'm much more likely to do it than if I'm just, it's just there, it's just on a menu. um, Retention, I think there are multiple factors. So one, repetition leads to retention. So very often when we sort of roll out a digital learning, we say, okay, this learning outcome's done, we don't need to come back to it. Next learning outcome, next learning outcome, next learning outcome. uh, what that does is that sort of tells people uh, once. But if we've learned anything from the people in marketing, it is that you must repeat for people to remember, right? You want someone to buy your razor, you don't put the ad out once and you're done, you put the ad out many times. So learning from our friends in marketing, I think learning outcomes need to sort of repeat. The second part is sort of the 70-20-10 principle. So when you make someone apply what they've learned, uh, and you make someone teach what they've learned to someone else, your probability of retention goes up a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also have one question. While we were initiating the webcast, we quoted statistics around digital learning, the impact of digital learning that can have on business. So it
Mhm.
says that implementing digital learning can subsequently improve the the cost of training and reduce the training cost by 50 to 70%. Right.
Mhm.
So do you have any thoughts over it? If you had a chance of doing a similar project with earlier, with your client, and you see the
Yeah.
similar results.
Mhm. Yeah, so it does. Digital learning definitely, one of the reasons so many people are moving towards technology just in general, right? Um, in the learning space, in insurance, in healthcare, wherever, technology can have really scalable impact on the cost. Um, the one thing I'll say, whether, and again, we would love to do business with people who are on this call, but I'm not talking about this just from a CCL lens. Whatever learning investments you make, whether they're with CCL, whether they're with others, whether they're digital or they're face to face, you have sort of the pure cost of learning, and then you have kind of the what you'd call the peripheral costs, right? So the immediate benefit from digital learning is going to come in, the easiest thing you see is peripheral costs. So travel time's gone, uh, time away from work is gone, which is kind of a hidden cost in many ways, that you're taking people off their work place for less time. Digital learning saves you a ton of money in that way. And you save on a ton of travel. Those are two very easy quantifiable ways that you can continue to keep your learning investments and save your travel. So if you're a learning development professional, and you're thinking of ways to negotiate for a larger learning and development budget, because the unspoken truth of digital learning is designing great digital learning experiences is expensive. It's time consuming, and so your upfront investments in digital are actually going to be higher, uh, but the benefits are coming later. And so when you're making that case for an upfront digital learning investment, what you want to do is probably make the business case on the travel costs that you're going to save and the time away from office that you're going to save.
Mhm. Sure, sure. So, Samir, I was reading a very interesting article on HBR, and they quoted that the number of self-learners enrolled for MOOCs as compared to employees from an organization enrolled in MOOCs is
Mm-hmm.
very different. As in, the individual who have involved as a self learner is more
Mm-hmm.
than employees enrolling for the MOOC. So everyone know the kind of benefits that digital can bring to the organization on the
Mm-hmm.
growth, on cutting the business cost. So what is the challenge according to you, in your experience? Why our organizations are not investing in digital?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that organizations are not investing in digital. I think we're definitely seeing an increased investment in digital. So, uh, you know, it's there are challenges, right? So if we go back to one of the slides where I asked the question of uh, how do you like to learn, our audience was heavily in favor of blended. But then when you see uh, how does your organization
Organizations.
deliver most of its training, you saw a much larger percentage of face to face. I think there is an element of we can see the training happening, so we believe it's happening. I still sense that um, a lot of times, and not so much from L&D departments who I think are fairly forward thinking, but from sort of traditional uh, business lines, uh, people who are accustomed to, I go to the classroom to learn. It's very hard for them to make that shift over and say, you know what, we're going to get great learning outcomes online. The same people are watching YouTube videos on how to cook. Okay. Um right. Like I use online learning to learn how to cook stuff. So, in our regular life, to your point, in our everyday life, we are very comfortable using online learning. We watch YouTube, we listen to podcasts. To your point, we take individual courses on Udemy, on Coursera. Um, but when it comes to the organization, I think there is a little bit of tradition
Right.
in sort of the face-to-face space. But I'm seeing that change. I think people are really playing with a lot more technology. And I think digital learning technology, digital learning programs are starting to really get sophisticated to the point where um, the technology is sort of becoming ubiquitous. Um, in the past, e-learning kind of came from compliance, right? Like let's face the truth. Uh, People got their workplace harassment training through
Right.
e-learning.
Yes.
People got their employee handbook through e-learning, and people got, if you were doing financial stuff, you got Sarbanes-Oxley. Uh, about the most boring kinds of training you were getting through e-learning. So that's where e-learning started, and that's what people, when you say, I'm going to roll out leadership development through digital learning, everyone's like, come on, are you serious? That's the stuff you use for compliance. And so I think there's a mindset shift that we're trying to evolve in organizations, but we'll get there.
Right. Right. So, any three, suggestions or advice that you want to give to the learning leaders or the HR leaders in terms of digital learning?
I think I have six, so I'll go back to my six, right? Um, just let me go back and bring up this slide because this is really this is our this is our best recommendations. So pick what you want to train, who you want to train, less is more, get support from the top. You know who your champions in your organization are, reach out to them, really think about your learner, put them at the center. That doesn't mean uh, listen to everything that is said about the learner and give them 1 minute training, right? uh, Nobody has become a great leader by watching a 1 minute video. uh, Even TED Talks, as much fun as they are to watch, do they really create behavior change? We always have to ask ourselves that question. Are we creating behavior change? Create opportunities for them to teach, create learning partners, and measure everything you do and design measurement upfront. So those are kind of the six recommendations I would make. um, and I'll say, we at CCL, we love having conversations with our clients. Whether you choose a CCL solution at the end of the day, or you decide to do something else, that's fine. But we just love having conversations. We love doing research with our clients, and so this stuff is what keeps us excited, um, helps us enjoy what we do. So we really invite that conversation.
Sure, sure. Samir, would you like to go back to the poll question that you took last?
Sure. Let's see what people have. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Now that we've had a little bit of conversation following this, let's go here. Okay. Oh, look at that. We got a lot of great responses. Wonderful. Hey, thank you everyone. This made my day. I love this. And if anyone else has more to share, I would love to get it. Um, and Anushri, I'll send you sort of the PDF of these slides that we've worked through. So even with the inputs of all the participants, and we can share that with the group.
Definitely we'll do that. So
Great. I'm delighted to see these responses, I have to say.
the
Sorry,
session
go ahead, Anushri.
yeah, the session was really engaging, and I feel that we have a paucity of time here. So with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up today's webcast, and we have many more questions coming in, and we'll share those questions with you, Samir.
Sure.
And yeah. So once again, we thank you, our today's webcast partner, Center for Creative Leadership, and our speaker, Mr. Samir, for the invaluable information that he has shared with us today and the 6 strategies. So meanwhile, to our audience, you can provide your feedback in the survey link provided in the chat section because your input matters. Stay tuned for the next module on 6th March. That concludes today's webcast. Thank you and have a great day.
Perfect. Thank you so much.